The air in my suit tasted like copper and old fear. My name is Ellen Brooks, and 6 hours ago, I was the last living thing aboard the Halcyon Reach, drifting 60,000 kilometers from anything that mattered. The rest of my crew, Tobias Griggs, Renata Alvarez, a kid named Danny Whitfield who'd only been out here 4 months, they were gone. Not dead. Taken. The Ashveil boarding pod had come through our hull like a fist through wet paper, and when the smoke cleared, 3 sets of boots were missing and mine were the only ones left standing, because I'd been sealed in the aft maintenance shaft running a coolant check when it happened. I want to tell you I was brave. I wasn't. I was just quiet, and quiet is sometimes the same thing as being alive. The Ashveil don't take prisoners to talk to. Everyone in the Reach colonies knows that. They take prisoners because human neural tissue burns clean and slow in their drive cores, and because we don't unionize, we don't negotiate, and apparently we scream in a frequency their engineers find useful for calibration. I'd heard the stories. I'd never believed the calibration part until I found the printout in the boarding pod's discarded manifest, still warped from the breach. It listed my crew by designation. Not names. Designation. I floated in the dark for 6 hours after that, hiding in a ship with no power, no comms, and no reason to think anyone was coming. The Halcyon Reach was a survey vessel, not a warship. We didn't even carry a distress beacon rated for interstellar range. Budget cuts, they told us, back when budget cuts were the scariest thing in my life. So when the proximity alarm chirped, a sound I hadn't heard since before the attack, because I'd shut every system down to hide our heat signature, I nearly stopped breathing. I pulled myself to the one working viewport and looked out into a field of stars that hadn't changed in 6 hours of my personal apocalypse. And there, cutting through the black like it owned the black, was a shape I didn't recognize. Long, dark, matte-hulled, running lights the color of a blood moon. Not Ashveil architecture. Too angular, too aggressive, built by something that wanted you to know it was coming before it wanted you to know why. For one long, sick moment, I thought they'd sent something back for me. Then the hailing frequency crackled, actual radio static, a sound so achingly familiar I started crying before I understood why, and a voice came through. A man's voice, tired and flat, and utterly, gloriously human. Unidentified vessel, this is the UES Covenant's Edge, out of Titan Fleet Yards. We're reading 1 heat signature and a whole lot of hull damage. If you can hear this, key your mic twice. I keyed my mic twice so hard I nearly cracked the housing. The voice on the other end didn't celebrate, didn't whoop, just went quieter, steadier, like a man setting down something heavy so he could pick up something else. Copy that, survivor. Sit tight. We're coming to get you. His name was Captain Aldous Reyes, and I would later learn that the Covenant's Edge wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this sector. They were a retrieval cruiser, half mothballed, running a skeleton crew on a routine sweep for wreckage from a Battle 3 systems over. Routine. That's the word he used when he finally got me aboard, wrapped me in a thermal blanket that smelled like machine oil and coffee, and sat across from me in a med bay lit gray and low. You're the only one, he said. Not a question. He'd read the ship's logs already. They took 3, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. Griggs, Alvarez, and a kid. Danny. He was 22. Reyes didn't say anything comforting, and I've thought about that a lot since. He didn't tell me it would be okay. He didn't tell me they were probably already gone. Even though we both knew the manifest, we both knew what calibration meant. He just asked me one question. Do you have a heading? I did. I had the last known trajectory off the boarding pod's exhaust wash, still burned into the Halcyon Reach's dead sensors, because I'd had nothing else to do for 6 hours except stare at data and refuse to let myself think about what it meant. Reyes stood up, and something in his face changed. Not anger, exactly. Something colder and more patient than anger. Ashveil don't run fast when they're hauling live cargo, he said. They run efficiently. There's a difference. I asked him why a half-crewed retrieval cruiser was about to chase down a warship. He looked at me like the answer should have been obvious. Because nobody else is close enough. And because we don't leave people on the table. Not even 3. Not even 1. I won't pretend I remember every hour of the 14 that followed. I remember the Covenant's Edge running dark and leaning through debris fields that would have torn a lesser pilot's nerve to ribbons. I remember Reyes on the comm to a skeleton crew of 19 people, calm as a man ordering breakfast, laying out a boarding plan against a ship 4 times their tonnage. I remember thinking they were all going to die for 3 names on a stolen manifest, and I remember that not one of them hesitated. I remember the moment we caught the Ashveil transport in a debris shadow near a dead moon, and Reyes turned to me and said, "You want to see this happen, or you want to look away?" No shame either way. I didn't look away. I watched 19 humans in a ship that shouldn't have been able to catch its prey. I watched breach pods fire in a pattern too fast for the Ashveil point defense to track, because, Reyes told me later, the Covenant's edge had been designed for exactly one job: getting people back who were never supposed to come back. I watched the boarding feed, grainy and chaotic, until a voice I didn't recognize, young, cracking, terrified, alive, said a name into an open channel. Danny Whitfield, reporting. I'm okay. I'm okay. Griggs and Alvarez came back too. Burned, starved, broken in places that would take months to heal. But back. Reyes found me afterward in the observation deck, watching the black. He didn't say anything triumphant. He just stood beside me and said, "That's the job. That's the whole job." I asked him why humanity still sent ships like his out here, half-funded, half-crewed, chasing warships 4 times their size for people the rest of the galaxy had already written off as calibration material. He thought about it for a long moment, the kind of pause that meant the answer mattered to him. "Because somebody has to be the reason it isn't hopeless," he said. "And it might as well be us." I've told this story 100 times since, to inquiry boards, to grieving families, to strangers who ask about the scars. But I always end it the same way, because it's the only ending that's true. I was left to die in the silence. And then the silence broke, because somewhere out there, humanity had decided that silence was a debt, and we always come to collect.